Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Ian Gallanar. I'm the founding artistic director of the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company in Baltimore, Maryland. And today I'm delighted to welcome as our guest my friend Lisa Wolpe. Lisa, thanks for joining us. So
Joy to see you.
here's where I get to talk about all the cool things you've accomplished. Lisa Wolpe is a critically acclaimed actor, director, writer, and producer. Her work has been seen at Playmakers Rep, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Utah Shakespeare Festival, Orlando Shakespeare Theatre, Colorado Shakespeare Festival, Berkeley Repertory Company, Cal Shakes, and more. She founded the all-female multicultural Los Angeles Women's Shakespeare Company in 1993, where for 23 years she produced, directed, and performed many iconic roles, including Hamlet, Richard III, Angelo, Leontes, Romeo, Shylock, and Iago. She has been a leader in the movement for gender parity in the areas of Shakespeare and gender for several decades. Her hit solo show, Shakespeare and the Alchemy of Gender, directed by Laurie Woolery, has toured universities and Shakespeare festivals around the U.S. and has played internationally at Prague Shakespeare Company, Bremen Shakespeare Company, in London at the Rose Theatre, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and King's College, at Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford, UK, Warwick University, UK, Vancouver, BC, and Stratford, Ontario. That is a long list. And we're delighted to have you join us to talk about Shakespeare and other stuff. Again, thanks for joining us, Lisa.
It's an honor.
So, I like to start off with, before we get to kind of today, about how you got started. So do you have an early or first kind of memory about performance, either you performing or watching a performance?
Well, my first performance really was As You Like It. I was an undergraduate at UC San Diego, and the graduates were putting on a repertory, including As You Like It. And the actress playing Rosalind started to manifest some problems with her tongue, swelling up psychosomatically, just as her 3 years of graduate, school time ended. She was in a panic mode anyway. With 2 days' notice, the director said, "Hey, Lise, can you sit in the theater and just watch this thing just in case?" So what happened was on opening night, I got to go on as Rosalind with book in hand with 5 minutes notice.
Wow.
And I had just a tremendous time playing this amazing show that was surrounded by all of my friends in the graduate department who were brilliant, and me just flying in with permission to fail. So I think that glorious failure has been my watchword. And also it was like a standing ovation. I found something that I could actually do well, me and Shakespeare, which felt like a really good meld. So I was, 17 then, and I'm 61 now. And I've been thinking about Shakespeare every day since. I just love it.
Was that the first sort of real connection you had to Shakespeare? Did you have anything earlier than that, or is that?
I think that was my first real connection to Shakespeare. I mean, Eric Christmas was my Shakespeare teacher. I was a journalist. I was planning to become a professional journalist at UC San Diego. And I took some theater classes just because they were fun. But when I got to Shakespeare, I thought, oh, this is more than fun. This is research. This is mastery. This is an old legacy. These colleagues are brilliant and deep. This is nothing I can ever master. I can work on this for the rest of my life. And also, I was a straight A student, and I was used to nailing something and getting kudos. And in this world, it was unknowable. There was no, that's it, you've done it. Even now, I'm like, well, okay, there's a new beginning on Hamlet. I may have played it twice, but I'm just beginning to understand certain phrases, So I just think it's something I can work on until I drop. And also, the more I work on it, the more delighted I am to find other friends who also do it. So just like you're my dear friend, and the president of the Shakespeare Theatre Association, which is no small deal, there's a whole kind of global shift in eloquence when you get into the Shakespeare tribe. And I love those people who delve deep and, talk smart and are deeply humanistic and funny and humble, and always working with groups of people in learning curves to make these productions come alive. I was an artistic director for 23 years, so also raising money and building love lines in the community and meeting all the librarians and the people who sell, lumber. It's just a great kind of group effort. It's like building a house, building a show.
It really speaks to me, that whole notion of pursuing the mastery of it, which is impossible to do. I mean, that's what appealed to me about it. I was later in life did I find Shakespeare. I was kind of a theater generalist, and then I found it, and I was like, oh, I could work on this for the rest of my life and still not quite get it.
That's what I think too. I think it's great,
Yeah.
and I think that humility is very grounding.
Mm.
But also it's very uplifting, the sacred element of it, the portals that open up when you're working, the aha moments, the kind of shimmering moments where time disappears.
Mm-hmm.
When I go into rehearsal on a Shakespeare play, if I'm directing, I have to have somebody tell me what time it is, because I go into the dream world going, and I'm downloading stuff. I have no idea how I'm learning, and connecting things that just seem out of time. And that's why stage managers are so fabulous. And that's it. Stop talking.
So talk to me, if you wouldn't mind, about this. You were at UC San Diego and you discovered Shakespeare, and then a bit later you founded this remarkable company, the Los Angeles Women Shakespeare Company. Is it company or project? Company. Yeah.
Company.
Company. Yeah. So what was the journey? What I imagine when you found a company, there's a real drive there. So what?
Well, yeah, there was a real drive there. What
Yeah.
happened was when I was 19, it was the second year that Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts, was holding month-long intensive actor trainings, led by Tina Packer, Kristen Linklater, Natsuko Ohama, B.H. Barry, and Mary Conway. So my friend had gone to the very first one, Daniel Osman. He went to the very first one. He came back and said, "You have to do this, Lisa." And I got a grant from Michael Addison, who is head of our department, Dr. Michael Addison, to go to the second ever intensive Shakespeare training program. So I went for a month with 60 other professionals from ages 18 to 60 and plunged in with this collaborative system of knowers. So some were fight choreographers, clown masters, text masters, voice people, dancers and thinkers, all working together. If Alexander doesn't uplift you, then Neil Freeman's folio work will. And so they would tag team in and out with each of the participants. I played Viola, which was a really interesting cross-gender assignment, because when she plays Cesario, I could bring out all of those deep set inquiries that I had as a somewhat androgynous person who was somewhat bisexual, thinking, what is this puzzle? This is interesting. This is actually a theatrical form where I can grow and learn, which was really cool. And after a month of doing that, I was really imprinted in this collaborative female-led learning model that Tina Packer had put together with Kristen. And at home at UC San Diego, I was working with Alan Schneider, who was taking me through every word of Albee and Beckett and Pinter. He put me in the graduate directing classes, and he was training me as a thinker to go word by word and unpack the masters, who were his friends. He was best friends with Sam Beckett. Mm-hmm. So when he took us through, those plays, he was really looking for brilliance and mastery in the American theater. He and Zelda Fichandler had founded the regional theater movement. Mm-hmm. And it was my joy to be his acolyte. And it was my intention to follow him to Broadway, which was his invitation. Don't go to grad school, come to New York. I'll put you on stage as an actress. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, falling into Shakespeare, I was so excited I came back and wanted to, be a director. So we had this ongoing argument, Alan and I. He said, "You're a fantastic actress. Don't think that American theater is going to let you direct, though. Mm-hmm. What I'm telling you is useful, but you're never going to be able to direct." But because I'm uppity, I was immediately trying to direct. So the first play I directed, Michael Addison let me direct Spring Awakening. And then it was The Abdication. And then I started directing Shakespeare back at Shakespeare and Company in the high school level where you would go in for 6 weeks and, teach and direct a play in a collaborative system. So Alan was very patriarchal,
Mm-hmm.
and Shakespeare and Company was very collaborative. So I did a series of those intensives as a paying customer. Then I was a text trainee, and then I was a clown master. Then I was a text master for Shakespeare and Company. Meanwhile, I got my equity card there, and I was touring Shakespeare to 25,000 school children, etc. Then came the moment when Kristen Linklater and a bunch of her colleagues, most notably Dr. Carol Gilligan, started an international, multicultural, all-female Shakespeare company called Company of Women. And I was invited to be a part of it. So all of my master teachers, Fran Bennett, Kristen Linklater, Carol Gilligan, they were acting and collaborating on this new project. So we'd go into universities and do an intensive training. We were doing a 3-year stint on Henry V, which I ended up playing the lead in at Smith College and at Shakespeare and Company. But for 3 years, we would unpack scenes through fight work, through clown work, but we'd do residencies at universities where we'd train the faculty in groups of women and their kids in groups of girls.
Mm.
And we would do ritual and song and Shakespeare scenes and create kind of a working aesthetic or a methodology for crossing gender. How does a woman play a man? So our first show, I played Henry V in a Donna Karan skin-tight leather vest, and the Dauphin had a cat suit on. So our female bodies were very much on stage, directed by Maureen Shea. And our text work and our understanding of the play was very feminist and had to do with kind of the rape of France by Henry and his disassociation, where he makes the Christian male white god his sort of disassociated father figure. And that was a comment on war, really going into the epilogue as a teaching tool. And then it was maybe 2003 or 2004 when I just stopped working with the East Coast guys altogether. I had started my company in 1993. So those first 10 years, I built here in Los Angeles a similar model. Fran Bennett, who was one of my master teachers, was my leading lady now. She was playing Lear, and she was playing Othello, and we were developing projects here. Natsuko Hama, who was my master teacher, was playing Prospero and playing, the nurse. I was playing Hamlet and Romeo, and I had a company of maybe 50 women and girls that would, for the first 10 years, we built all the sets together, we did all the producing work, and we had 7-week rehearsal periods. So we would drop in the shows, we would do a lot of on-the-floor explorational work, and we came up with just world-class productions, even though it was 99-seat theater stuff. And then after about 10 years, I started to professionalize more. We were on our way to the Globe. Tina Packer was going to direct me as Richard III. Mark Rylance had given us a slot at the Globe to be the first all-female company back in 2000, and PBS had green-lighted a documentary about our first 10 years as this, ahead of its time, all-female multicultural company that was knocking it out of the park. And we were raising $350,000 for that show. We had just done a $200,000 12th night at the John Anson Ford Outdoor Theater and done free Shakespeare for 11,000 people, which I directed and played Viola in. So there was a kind of an upflow of ambition. And then there was a kind of a decline, which really hit in 2008 with the real estate and the financial collapse, and we weren't able to get more growth financially. And there was a point where, and this has been really my watchword for the last 10 years, even working with the Shakespeare Theatre Association, where pay equity started to become a more important flag to wave than gender parity on stage. Because we were getting gender parity on stage, but the women weren't being paid equally. They were getting the non-equity salary of $300 to play Desdemona, and the guys were getting the $700 a week to play Brabantio. And we're like, well, but that's not fair though. How are we going to work? for pay equity so that it's survivable, so that there's longevity in the field. And one of the reasons I've been more of a director than an actor is because it pays so much more to be a director.
Mm.
And just in terms of survivability, I've been working regionally a little bit as a director in order to earn enough money to live.
Yeah.
That's a long answer.
No, it's a great answer. Let me ask you a question, because the answer from you to this kind of question I've witnessed it. It was revelatory to me. And it's a simple but really difficult question, which is why? Why do you do this work? Why is this work important to you?
For me, it really uplifts my soul. I'm given to depression. I'm not interested in most of the things that people are interested in. I'm particularly interested in money or pleasing the male gaze. I'm here to make my soul happy. And when I get to play something with others, like a Hamlet and a Laertes, it makes me so happy to have words, to have people that want to engage on the level that we do verbally. And my family is Christian and Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like it that everybody's hated on for their cultural identity. I want to bring us together and share ideas and language. So, in 1993 we had a 50% white, 50% not white composition, and immediately we saw that the audience reflected who was on stage.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing Gertrude, then you are bringing your family to see you on stage. And if you're a black actress playing Gertrude, they're all like, yep, the queens are played by black actresses. We see that.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's been,
it's interesting that you say that you make that connection between your family and the work itself, because I likewise am in a multiracial, multicultural family, and to go from that to a work situation or an art, creating art that's not like that, seems alien and weird to me. That it's not, it's more than just natural. It's it's the work on stage just feels connected to my personal life more. And if I don't do that, then it's disconnected, and then I'm not sure that the work resonates for me. I don't know about our audience.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, when I go to New York and I take my brother who's half black out to the theater, I like to take him to Medea's family reunion at Radio City Music Hall so that almost everybody in the theater is African American, so that everybody that he sees on stage, he also saw on television. So that he feels this is a celebration together, you
Yeah.
know? And for me, that's an awakening. I'm like, everybody at Radio City Music Hall knows this song.
Yeah.
Tyler Perry, like they all know these cues. I get to be included in that.
Yeah.
But, just for instance, I've been going to Oregon Shakespeare Festival for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was a kid, I thought you had to be a little blonde hourglass-shaped girl to be in a Shakespeare play.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's more than 50% people of color. And now I just feel more excited, to see, as you know, our families on stage and not leaving people out.
So what about that journey? Because that journey that I think, I don't know where we are in the story right now of changing Shakespeare on stage in the United States. But we're certainly in a different place than we were in 1993 when you founded the company.
Right.
I'd love to hear your thoughts about what, why that journey has succeeded, why it's important, and what's next. That's a lot.
I think it's super important to grow and change and adapt. I think of all of the groups of people in the American theater, the Shakespeare people are the furthest behind in terms of integration and representing community, just because, number one, it's very difficult to make money as a Shakespeare person. So why would a person of color who's already struggling with prejudice against how much money they can make per hour do Shakespeare if there was no work? And I'm still advising mentees who are like, I don't want to do Shakespeare, I want to do television. I'm like, but look, there's work now. You can play kings and queens and rulers and villains and magicians at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival now. Don't avoid that. You're going to love this work. But also, work like Maddie said, decolonizing Shakespeare, that
Yeah.
can make a production far less cold and forbidding in terms of its welcome mat to the community. And as you know, Shakespeare Theatre Association has been working on this for decades. I was a keynote speaker for us in 1994 after our initial productions of Romeo and Juliet and Othello were so successful in LA. It was just really touching a need. We were selling out and also getting brilliant reviews. So if we could do that in 1993, you can see why in 2021, you don't really have to convince people that a female Hamlet's going to break box office records anymore. But back in the day, we were trying to get Oregon to do an all-female Shakespeare company. It took 30 years, really, or 25 years for them to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's been a slow journey. I know that for sure.
Well, sometimes we would shout, at the congregation, go, this is moving at glacial speed.
Yeah.
We say this every year. Look at the numbers. Look at our successes when you do. Empower women directors and empower female actors and empower people of color. And then we started shaking our fists and saying, you're going to be left behind if you don't. You're going to be the only all white company with all white male playwrights in the world. Think about it. And then we started saying, change the board, because if the board doesn't think the artistic director can be anybody other than a white man, nothing will change. And so year after year, we've tried to up-level the game. And I think when we were in Prague and we did a show of hands, how many people who are artistic directors can say that their Shakespeare company has achieved gender parity on stage for the actors, 50% female actors? It was at least 60%, wasn't it? It was so huge that I was moved to rewrite the introduction of my chapter in Chuck Nay's book about directing, because I had said it's never going to change. Yeah. And then I had to say it has changed.
Yeah,
it's changing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I see it, and I think there's another component to that, which is our audience. And Shakespeare audiences can have real set opinions about the way things ought to be, but they're also incredibly empathetic people and very bright people, so that even though sometimes it takes a little bit of nudging and it takes a little bit of convincing, I've seen a big difference in the way audiences respond to the different gender appearance on stages. That 20 years ago there was still a lot of resistance and reluctance, and there is still some resistance to it now. I wouldn't deny that, but it feels very, very different to me from talking to my audiences.
Well, and 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet.
Yeah,
it's hard for anybody to understand.
Yeah.
But I was working in isolation, really, until about 10 years ago, when you could look around the internet and say, oh, Dash Van Sadia just did an all-male Taming of the Shrew in India. I can type that up and see images from it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But back in the day, we only had newspapers, and if nobody was reporting on it, then it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there were obviously women have been playing Hamlet for hundreds of years, and there's nothing particularly new about it. But it is new for people to say only a man can play Petruchio and only a woman can play Kate.
Uh-huh.
When did you make that up? That's not what happened.
Yeah.
A gender-bending art form was invented by the Shakespeare troupe and was played brilliantly by women and boys and supported, obviously, by female patrons like Queen Elizabeth and Mary Sidney. The community was interested in looking at socio-political power. They decided, we want to look at Capulet shouting at his daughter, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. And they wanted a boy to stand in that situation and go, what shall I do? My only option is suicide. My only option is being alone and walking out by myself, or I will be sold like a cow to the highest bidder. So even though women weren't playing that, the idea that a man could shimmer in all of those iterations and that androgyny was actually the stated ideal of the alchemist, you know, just to have Queen Elizabeth say, a proper gentleman must be able to dance the galliard, to kick high and dance, as well as sword fight and write poems and woo a lady and travel, all of the things that made a man. They included the feminine side. And I think for herself, Queen Elizabeth was definitely saying, I have a masculine side. And I, in myself, have so many aspects of divinity and selfhood and mortality. I can be a man and a woman, a god and a human. Do you know what I mean? I will be the virgin queen and I will rule the world, and my story will not end in a happy marriage and children. My story will be a legacy of genius and rulership. So I think a lot of the stories being written for her in specific, you know, and then, you know, Macker's maybe written for King James, who kind of hated women and was a bit of a misogynist and a fearful of witches type person. You have two different major patrons paying for the plays. And I think that's fascinating, because the people that are looking for plays now, I think 70% of our ticket buyers are female.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And almost all of the theater students are female. If you go into a college, you have more women than men. So the money and the interest in storytelling is still very much with the women, bringing the people together into the theater, telling their husbands, you come see this Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, you come see Waiting for Godot, you come see As You Like It, come with me and bring the kids. This will be great for us. Mm-hmm. It's usually the woman making that decision, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you speak to something too that I think is really important, that I've heard you talk about very eloquently before, is that this idea of art in Shakespeare's time was for that existed in that time for those people, and art now has to exist for our society and our people now. There's no point in doing kind of historical things with ignoring our kind of contemporary cultural life.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
Since the, you know, defining gender roles is, I think, the key social change that we're living with, it would be crazy to ignore it in our art.
It would be crazy, because here you have a playwright who wrote for gender bending, mm-hmm. matching a society that now has a gender spectrum unparalleled in the history of my world. I've never seen every iteration of gender expressed by even a 4-year-old is being born and saying, oh, no, I am not what you're saying I am. I'll define myself. My identity is complex. I'm asexual. I'm female. I'm male. I'm trans. There's a lot going on that we never discussed when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Even my teaching methodology, if I take a same-sex cast,
mm-hmm.
that's all female, let's say, and I start differentiating Hamlet from Ophelia, I'm so old, I'm still going, well, Ophelia would, you know, supinate her gestures. Hamlet would pronate his gestures. Perhaps Hamlet should be taller, and perhaps, you know, Ophelia should be indirect and he should be direct. You know, just to say, how are we different? I should initiate from a deeper voice, and she should use her mask voice. So those are things we started with, but they no longer apply across the board. Now we have bearded men playing Miranda. You know, we have all kinds of interesting shadings. Just like when I first played, you know, Henry V in a Donna Karan form-fitting vest, going, yes, I have a female form and I'm playing a male character. I'm going to remind you of that every moment of the day. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at footage from the Trans Shakespeare project that I did in London a few years ago, and the men were wearing corsets and skirts with their beards, but because they were playing Miranda, they were playing Volumnia, they were playing the female role, after 2 minutes, I don't look at that silhouette in the same way. I'm like, yes, he has a beard, that's fine. That's Miranda.
Yeah.
So that imaginative thing where I'll be the cowboy, you be the Indian, I'll be the bear, and you be the hunter. I'll be the, you know, it's an imaginative play, and audiences go with it immediately. This character's playing the moon. This character's playing the sun. This one's playing a cockroach. We don't care, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we do talk a lot now about like specific performance techniques, because a lot of people want to play everything the way they play themselves. And we're coming from an older school set of skills where you're not just playing yourself. If you're playing Caliban, that's a rapist monster who can people the island with Calibans. So if that person's not, if that entity doesn't have genitals or isn't interested in sexual definition, it just changes the way that Miranda needs to be protected from that reflection of, is it rape culture or what is, you know, like you just have to think about the function of the story. If Coriolanus isn't masculine, then does the play work when you call him boy instead of man? Because a lot of people don't want to take gender into consideration at all in the Shakespeare plays. But I think because they were written for a same-sex company, they had to make choices in performance.
Yeah.
How is the nurse different from Capulet? And if it's comic, he can have a 5 o'clock shadow, you know? Just like in South Pacific, you can wear coconuts and play female. But generally, when women play male roles, they take it more seriously, because being given power and to say, you will die, you will live, is kind of freeing for a woman who's always playing the victim or the support role.
So Lisa, I could listen to you talk for a lot longer. I love your ideas, and I just love being in your company.
I love you.
But I'm gonna finish up with something irreverent, which is our lightning round.
Okay.
Where I ask you ridiculous questions, and you can give me straight answers or ridiculous answers, whichever you choose.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Least favorite Shakespeare play?
Comedy of Errors.
Ocean or mountains?
Ocean.
Sullied or solid?
Solid.
This is the only question that has a correct answer. Godfather 3, yes or no?
That's harder. Yes, I'll say yes.
The most superfluous character in a Shakespeare play?
Superfluous? Aren't they all perfectly written? Don't we need them all?
You can answer.
Richard II, I'm not sure. Some of those messengers in the end, I'm like, I don't even know you. Why are you bringing this news? So there's somebody, I'm going to have to think of which one. Is it Salisbury? There's a couple of those that I could conflate. But once I'd be inside it, I'd be like, no, this person is essential. You can't change them.
Right.
Yeah.
Favorite word from Shakespeare?
Disappointed.
Disappointed.
Well, there was this thing about dis being the name of the ninth circle of hell, which Kevin Coleman was telling me about, or it's at least the underbelly of things, dis. But if dis is the name of the ninth circle of hell, and if Shakespeare made up those words, then I was, all those pronouns like unhappy, not pronouns, but unhappy, disappointed, disappear, disgust, appointing yourself to hell, disappointed. I thought that was fascinating, because it's the underneath of things, when you turn over a rock and you see what's under it, that you get this deep level of wordplay. So I love the dis words. Disgust.
That's a great answer. And last, final question. What's your favorite play? Doesn't have to be Shakespeare. What's your favorite play?
Right now I'm loving The Winter's Tale. Jen LeBlanc just wrote a beautiful thing called Winter's Passage, which is sort of the magic of Paulina and Hermione and their backstory. And also it has a whole world that happens where time is, where Chronos is. And I just think the magic and the magicianship of The Winter's Tale is at the moment what I love the most. But I love all the Shakespeare plays. I don't know them all as well as that one, though.
Lisa, thank you so much, my friend, for spending time with us. And best of luck in all this, whatever we're in. I hope you remain safe and healthy and all that stuff.
Thank you, Ian. Love to you and all our friends.